next thing that it's important is to make sure we're talking about his emotions, talk about those feelings during preferred sensory activities, as well as non-preferred sensory activities, so he can really label how he's feeling and he can connect how he's feeling, which activities are making him feel happy, which ones are helping him feel regulated, which ones he can use in order to self-regulate more independently, if that's possible for him.
I'm Rachel.
And I'm Jessica, and this is All Things Sensory by Harkla.
We are both certified occupational therapy assistants, and together with Harkla, we are on a mission to empower parents, therapists, and educators to help raise confident and strong children of all abilities.
On this podcast, we chat about all things sensory, diving into special needs, occupational therapy, parenting, self-care, overall health and wellness, and so much more.
We are here to provide raw, honest, and fun strategies, ideas, and information for parents, therapists, and educators, as well as other professionals to implement into daily life.
Thank you so much for joining us.
Hey there, welcome back to All Things Sensory by Harkla. We're so happy to have you again for another podcast episode. I'm Rachel.
I'm Jessica.
And today we are answering a listener question brought to you by a listener question. It's going to be great. I was not prepared.
Did not know where you were going with that.
No, because normally you say what we're going to talk about.
Wow, you just decided to talk over me. It's fine.
Well, you just stopped talking, so I was like, I better take this one over. Okay, what are we talking about today?
All right, we're going to talk about what we're going to talk about. I'm going to read our listener question. Hello, my son is 12 and is on the autism spectrum and has been recently diagnosed with ADHD. He hasn't progressed in reading in the last 2 years, and my struggle has been asking for supports in various areas to learn how to help him self-regulate or even how to understand his sensory processing challenges. How do we figure out what exactly are the sensory processing issues? Who can formally screen and diagnose? I know that the school OT wouldn't incorporate primitive reflexes, which my son had been proven to have retained reflexes. How can that be tied into daily school needs to justify school OT? A lot of things to dive into here. First and foremost, we do have a sensory preferences checklist.
We'll link it in the show notes.
We'll link it in the show notes in the description below. That way you can go through the list and identify what types of sensory input he is seeking out and what types of sensory input he is avoiding. Whatever he's seeking out, those are the sensory activities that you want to incorporate more of and incorporate those into the daily routine because he's seeking out certain things to help his body feel more regulated. So we want to incorporate those into the daily routine because they help his body feel better.
The next thing that it's important is to make sure we're talking about his emotions, talk about those feelings during preferred sensory activities, as well as non-preferred sensory activities, so he can really label how he's feeling and he can connect how he's feeling, which activities are making him feel happy, which ones are helping him feel regulated, which ones he can use in order to self-regulate more independently, if that's possible for him.
Yep. I would recommend to create a sensory corner or a sensory space where he can go whenever he needs to decompress. If he's in school, it sounds like he's in school, and after school can often be a difficult time for our sensory kids. So over the weekend, create a sensory corner with him that has all of his favorite sensory tools. It could be a tent, it could be a closet, it could be just a space in his room, somewhere that is like a designated sensory space that's not going to get taken down or taken apart. And he can use it after school. He can go into the sensory corner, the sensory space, use his sensory tools there, drink some water. And that can be a really great strategy to decompress after being at school all day and being overstimulated and having all of these demands placed on him. And then he can also use it at any other time during the day. Once he knows what it's for and understands, I can go here when I'm feeling anxious or angry, then he can use it and be more independent with that strategy.
The next thing the listener said, the parent said, was that the child hadn't progressed in reading for 2 years. And I want to look at their primitive reflexes, which The parents said that they know that they're impacted. And I also want to look at the visual skills, the ocular motor skills too, because if we aren't progressing in reading, let's look at the saccades, the convergence, the divergence, how those eye muscles are working together. And a lot of that goes in with those primitive reflexes. So I know the parents said they want reflex integration to be happening in the schools, but unfortunately, I just don't think that there's a way that you can say, I want you to be doing this with my child in OT at school.
That's really going to be determined by the school-based OT on if they have training in primitive reflexes and if they know how to incorporate primitive reflex integration into an academic setting.
Yeah.
You can have a meeting with the OT
Yeah.
and the school to determine that and talk to them about that. But
if the reflexes are impacting their academics, then you can push to have those activities and those exercises added to his IEP.
yeah, on his IEP as like sensory breaks and sensory strategies. Yes.
Yeah. And reflex integration activities as well,
Potentially.
if it's impacting his academics.
Potentially.
But I think it will be difficult for you to go in and say, I want you to, I don't know. I just feel like it's challenging to get
If he's on
done.
an IEP, you can go into the IEP meeting and have these specific things added to his IEP, because that is it's a law.
a regulation. Yeah.
So if he's on an IEP, if he's not on an IEP, it does make it more difficult. So many variables.
There's a lot of variables that we don't know, but regardless, he should be getting reflex integration intervention. I would also maybe look into vision therapy if that is a possibility in your area. If not, I would start with just the reflex integration and working on those reflexes. Ideally, the ocular motor skills can improve. It's not obviously guaranteed that we're going to have, vision improvements or ocular motor improvements, but potato, it's all connected.
It's all connected. I think if you're not already receiving outpatient OT services, that's where I would go next. If you've had it in the past, but you were discharged or took a break, now that he has this new diagnosis of ADHD, it might be the right time to go back and focus on that and hopefully find a therapist who's trained in ADHD and primitive reflex integration. We do have some other resources for you, other podcast episodes, some courses that you can look into specific to ADHD and primitive reflexes.
And vision.
So we will link those in the show notes. We go back and forth all the time of like, we have all of these resources that we've created for parents and therapists, which are great, especially for parents who are stuck maybe on a wait list or they don't have services available in their area. If you do have ability to get in-person services with a trained professional, that's ideal because they're going to be able to make a connection with you and your child. They're going to give you individualized strategies as new things come up, and they're trained in this. So they really do have that ability to like problem solve these areas where as a parent, you don't have the background and the training. So it's a little more difficult.
Yeah.
Not impossible, but difficult.
No, definitely not impossible. And also taking your child through these activities on a daily basis. The hardest part with reflex integration is consistency and getting kids on board, doing the activities every day, participating with them. That consistency is definitely the challenge. And kids often push back when it's their parents telling them, do this, do that. I know firsthand how exhausting it is. Yes. So that's why we always say, try to get with a professional first and then use our resources as complementary.
Yes.
Yeah.
I think the main thing is understanding his sensory needs is going to be huge. So like we said, we'll link the sensory preference checklist below. You can click it, you can download it and use it and incorporate more of those sensory activities and sensory strategies that he's seeking out.
Yes. And I know the parent asked, how do we figure out exactly what the sensory processing issues are? That you'll get assessed in occupational therapy in person. We have our screening checklist, but you'll get a true sense of the assessment in person. The list that we share is more of like a screening. It's not standardized. It's just a really easy checklist to say, oh, well, we're seeking this or we're avoiding this, and this is what it means and this is why. And then we can move on. But I think that it can get dangerous if like parents are, trying to diagnose their own children with these different things. So when in doubt, rule it out, get a professional's help, and advocate for your child's needs. I'm proud of you for trying to get these reflex integration, these sensory strategies into the classroom. So keep on keeping on advocating for his needs. So yeah, there you go. I think that covers it.
If you have a question that you want us to answer on the podcast, there's a link below for a form that you could fill out. The parent who asked this question, feel free to send us a message. Let us know if this was helpful. If you have any follow-up questions, go ahead and send us a message. Probably Instagram's the best way to do that. Or you can fill out the form again and say, hey, you answered my question in episode number, and then let us know so we know which question you are.
Yeah.
Because we keep these anonymous. Yeah. So you'll have to let us know. And then if you have any follow-up questions.
Exactly. Or additional details.
Yes.
I was just thinking, this is totally off topic, but I was just thinking about this time that I submitted a question to a late night talk show. What? It was Craig Ferguson. Do you remember Craig Ferguson? How long ago was that? This is back when I was dating Daniel years ago. And I submitted a question and he read it on TV. This is Rachel from Boise, Idaho.
Stop. So what was your question?
Well, in the show, there was like a horse that was like a character horse. They had like a person who was the front actor, and then there was like a person who was the butt actor, and like it was a whole costume. And I said, how much does the butt actor get paid for the horse thing? I don't know.
Did they get paid more?
Well, he didn't say. He was like, he read it and he was like, and like threw it.
Oh, because he didn't even answer your question.
Because he didn't want to think that, he didn't want people to know that it was two actors.
That's hilarious.
The horse. I don't know. It was really dumb, but that just made me think about it. Maybe we need to start getting first names and being like, this is from Rachel this question's from Rachel in Boise, Idaho.
I mean, people can totally put their names on their questions if they would like. Not if you're a therapist asking about clients, though. Please don't do that.
So anyways.
Okay, I think that's it.
That's it.
Hopefully that was helpful. I feel like we rambled on quite a bit.
It was an open conversation, and I think sometimes having the brainstorming conversation is collaboration. That's what we need as therapists. And a lot of therapists don't have that collaboration. So we are your collaboration. You're welcome.
Hopefully it's helpful. If this was helpful, let us know. Share this episode with a friend. Make sure you're watching us on YouTube or Spotify because we're on video.
Woo woo. Okay, this is great. We'll plan on seeing you next week.
Okay, bye.
Thank you so much for listening to All Things Sensory by Harkla.
If you want more information on anything mentioned in the show, head over to harkla.co/podcast to get the show notes.
If you have any follow-up questions, the best place to ask those is in the comments on the show notes, or message us on our Instagram account, which is at Harkla_family or at All Things Sensory Podcast. If you just search Harkla, you'll find us there.
Like we mentioned before, our podcast listeners get 10% off their first order at Harkla. Whether it's for one of our digital courses or one of our sensory swings, the discount code SENSORY will get you 10% off. That's SENSORY.
Head to harkla.co/sensory to use that discount code right now.
We are so excited to work together to help create confident kids all over the world. While we make every effort to share correct information, we're still learning.
We will double check all of our facts, but realize that medicine is a constantly changing science and art.
One doctor or therapist may have a different way of doing things from another.
We are simply presenting our views and opinions on how to address common sensory challenges, health-related difficulties, and what we have found to be beneficial that will be as evidence-based as possible.
By listening to this podcast, you agree not to use this podcast as medical advice to treat any medical condition in either yourself or your child.
Consult your child's pediatrician or therapist for any medical issues that he or she may be having.
This entire disclaimer also applies to any guests or contributors to the podcast.
Thanks so much for listening.